Hi, I'm Abby Shu. I'm a vice president at Benefactor Group, and I am very excited to be joined today by Ali Colbran, who is the senior director of development at Feeding San Diego. We had the pleasure of working with Ali over the last year or so on a development assessment and plan, looking at all aspects of fundraising at Feeding San Diego, and then supporting the team in the implementation of some of the early recommendations of that plan. So can you describe your work with Benefactor Group and what led Feeding San Diego to decide you wanted to bring in a partner to do a full development assessment and annual fundraising plan?
Like pretty much every hunger relief organization, COVID really created this immense need in the community, but then subsequent support for food banks like Feeding San Diego. But there were, significant fluctuations in fundraising. We also had leadership turnover over the past couple of years. So we wanted to work with a firm and chose Benefactor Group because we really wanted a fresh assessment about what is working kind of in this post-COVID environment after we'd grown our fundraising so much and kind of settled on a new normal. And what are the areas of opportunity for us? I also have personally been through a handful of development assessments, both at Feeding San Diego and in other organizations. The assessment was really helpful, not just for me, because even if there's always things that you didn't realize or didn't know when you go through an assessment, but more importantly, you get that kind of support and justification, I think, for some of the things that you're seeing that you can bring to leadership and the board, who get to see the work that we're doing from a fresh perspective as well.
That's great. And along those lines, one of the key findings and recommendations from our plan was the need for you to expand your team in order to achieve your fundraising potential and to position for these large future plans that you have. Can you talk about how the planning process helped you to create alignment and buy-in internally and also externally?
A lot of times, and this is the case at Feeding San Diego, when you're working with leadership or a board that doesn't necessarily have a real deep history in the nonprofit space, and so they kind of are comparing what we do through a for-profit lens, or maybe that one nonprofit that they've been exposed to, how they did things, and to have Benefactor Group come in and share best practices across the entire sector, data from an entire sector, comparing us against like organizations, I think really helps leadership and the board see Feeding San Diego within this larger context. And that was really helpful in justifying some of the increased capacity that we were seeking. And we've already seen it be incredibly effective even in year one. We happened to invest this first year really in the individual giving space. So both with individual giving officers, but also support roles in that space. And our individual giving grew over 24% this past year, which is far more than we had anticipated from prior years. But that's also really encouraging too, that you say this will work and then you do it and then it works. That's really motivating that the other things in the plan, okay, well, that worked. So let's try these other things that maybe we are more skeptical about. So that's been really, really helpful.
How did this process help you to build a culture of philanthropy, not just within your team, who we spend a lot of time working with, but really thinking across departments at Feeding San Diego and with the board? And have you seen any shifts in terms of people just understanding the role of fundraising and understanding the role they can play as partners to your team?
Again, messenger here was key. Our team has talked about cultural philanthropy for a long time, but having Benefactor Group come in and share with leadership at Feeding San Diego and the board about how important that is to sort of making fundraising more effective overall. We've made strides that we hadn't made before in the last year. It's an open discussion at all levels now. A highlight has been, we have a gratitude outreach program that we engage volunteers in, which has been really effective. We've been doing it since the pandemic. We now have staff members outside of development that engage in that program. The fruits of that labor are starting to come to fruition. A program staff who wrote a handwritten note 3 months later, the donor sent in their biggest donation they'd ever sent in. And so that's been really motivating and they're excited. And then at the board level, we've been talking more about their own fundraising and their participation in the fundraising process more openly. We've also started for the first time sharing reports on cumulative board giving and getting, which we hadn't been doing before. And it's been a big step forward to be able to do that.
Awesome. I'd love to hear that. Some people say that writing the plan is an easy part and really beginning to implement it is more challenging. So I'm curious how the Benefactor Group team has supported your entire team in implementing some of these recommendations and frankly staying accountable to what is a somewhat daunting multi-year plan. And what has been the impact of this work, both directly on your teams and then indirectly and more broadly with the communities you serve?
For us, we invested in implementation support, which I would definitely recommend. It was really helpful to ensure that this wasn't just a plan that collected dust on the shelf. But I also think that giving myself and the team in particular, like the grace that this is a long process and we don't have to do everything in the plan right away. And so giving yourself the grace to still pick that up, still refer back to it, creating mechanisms where you have a check-in to see the dividends pay off. Individual giving exploded this year, and that's where we made investments. That's where we've done that. So it's even motivating to like go back to that and look at it.